Welcome to today's webinar, courtesy of the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. Discover no-cost, valuable business services to help you thrive, whether starting your entrepreneurial journey or scaling your existing business. We have the resources and expertise to help you succeed. For more information, please visit our website or text 502-977-5800. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions or engage with our speaker. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Dave Oetken. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Thanks for joining us today on another Toolkit Tuesday. And as always, I'm joined with my good friend and co-worker, Janet Flaw. Hey, Janet.
Hey, good Tuesday to you, Dave.
Yeah. So we got a lot going on today, but before we get going, just to make sure you guys can see and hear us okay, because sometimes things happen. Well, it happens more to us than I like to admit. But if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar. And you should, if you don't, just take your cursor and hover over at the bottom. It should pop right up, and then there you'll see the little chat feature. If you click the chat button, the chat should pop up. And if you wouldn't mind just saying hello, that you can see and hear us. Tell me your name and where you're joining from. I really enjoy that because it's really cool to see where people are all over the country sometimes, and that's really fun for me to check out. So, hey, Thomas, how are you? Where are you from, Thomas? Appreciate you joining us today. Janet is in the office with me. Oh, San Antonio. Wow. That's a pretty good clip. Hi, Amy. From the comments. Yeah, Louisville. Hi, Amy. Houston, Texas. Hey, good to see you. Thanks for joining another Texas. How are you guys? Sinead. Wow, thanks for joining. Really appreciate that. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you again. I think we connected on LinkedIn a couple days ago, or a week ago, I guess. So, yeah. Anyway, today, hey, Pat from Maryland. Awesome. Hey, Dale. I was just at your all's place not too long ago. Good place for a cold beer. Absolutely the best. Thanks for joining. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I've been on a Pilsner kick lately for whatever reason. I don't know why. You know, it's not like the super popular, but that's me. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining today. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about something I've been on a little tear about. So as we go through everything today, if you have any questions or comments, just put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on things, and we can just have a discussion and all. But so today we're going to be talking about, like I said, a little journey that I've been on, and it is about, you know, being productive and kind of protecting yourself as you do that. And it's a pretty important subject to me. So a little bit about me. I'm the director again. I'm here, the director of the center here, and been doing it for a while. There's my contact info. As always, you guys are always welcome to reach out to me. Be happy to hear from you. You know, we work with tons of people from all over the country here at the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. And we can help with your business plans, your financing, help you find loans, and just any general operational stuff. We have a pretty good staff here with a lot of experience, a lot of business ownership. Most of us, or all of us actually, are still entrepreneurs and have other companies on the side that we do as well. But that's what we do here. We're here to help you. Everything we do is free. So make sure to take advantage of all the free services that you can. I always did, and I found it very helpful. So just a little backstory, how to set this all up and how I got here. Um, in 2019, pre-pandemic, we worked exclusively with clients here in person. I would spend most of my days in a coffee shop meeting people, clients all day, and we're in downtown Louisville. Parking's not great where our office is, and so most of us would just meet people out wherever they were. We go to their place or whatever, and I would generally work with maybe 100, 110 people a year. And then, as you know, because we've all been through it in 2020, April 2022, the world totally changed in a hurry. And we went from that cadence to something really close to total chaos, where, we were working with, I personally worked with almost 500 clients in a year, just giving them resources, trying to keep people alive. And, we've all been through it. Same with my team, and we worked relentlessly and 7 days a week, sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, maybe longer. And it was a rough time. But it was kind of exciting. And, I've always been, a really hands-on, get it done type of person. If things are tough, just get your head down and really grind forward and get it through. And, I don't know if, what had happened, but, I was kind of having a hard time personally, but I didn't really know that I was having a hard time. And so in about a couple of years in, maybe 2023, I had a meeting with my team. And, basically, I had burned out a couple of them. They moved on, and of some of my best coaches. And I asked my remaining team, what's going on here? What's the big problem? And intuitively I knew, but I needed kind of a kick in the pants. But there just wasn't enough time to live a life or be, to do anything. And so, when that happened, I really kind of had to step back and see, really what was going on here. So I kind of really went on a quest, basically. So much so that I've, since then and up until this day, I've still been doing it. So much so that my team doesn't want to hear about it anymore. But, I learned these things. Real productivity and living a good life is not about grinding out more work or squeezing more into every hour or freeing up more hours to work so you can do things at work. That's really not what it's all about. Because really you want to make a difference, and you want to do it in a good way. And so really the real purpose of productivity is you have goals, you want to make progress to those goals, but you want to make sure that you have a life and you're not damaging yourself, as you do that. And basically the most important thing is we all want to live a well-lived life. We want to increase the joy in our life, and that's the most important thing about anything you do. And because if you have that joy in your life, the real secret is that when you feel good, both physically and mentally, you are naturally more productive. So that is the key to it. So when you distill it all down, productivity is energy management versus time management. So I came up with a plan, and it was basically kind of 4 step, but I wanted to go on this quest. I was going to do it for a year. And I resolved to look for solutions everywhere. So I read books, I listened to podcasts, I watched a ton of YouTube, just whatever I could, I asked people, interviewed people that I respected that seemed to be able to produce all kinds of cool work and stuff. I would identify what they were doing or a solution that I found, and I would try each for 30 days. And I would keep track of everything. I would plan on paper. There's tons of studies that show, writing with a pen and some paper and planning that way, you get way better results. And then whatever worked, I would keep that and kind of put it into a system and try to instill it in my life. So as I started learning, I had all these random things. I had to sort of organize my thought process. And so after reading some stuff, I realized that attitude and is the most important thing. That's where everything starts. It starts in the mind. That's where it begins. So if you have a good attitude, you can you can always make everything flows from that. If you have a defeatist attitude where you feel like nothing's going to work, then that's exactly right. And if I have that good attitude and I have my mind kind of clear, I will feel big. I'll be able to do things, from a health and body standpoint, where I can improve. And these two things working together back and forth will help me face the world and be strong and move things forward. And so when I looked at where I was at that time, I had a ton of underlying issues. My health was suffering, my relationships were strained. Some just fell apart. And in my mind, I had a lack of clarity, a ton of brain fog. I felt overwhelmed all the time. I didn't really feel like I had any purpose or had a fulfilling life. I was probably totally burned out, probably depressed. The sad thing about this is, like, I was really good about just covering it all up. I don't think anybody around me understood where I was at that time. This is what I felt. I felt always exhausted. I couldn't sleep. There was so much rumination and issues in my head. Sometimes I was so indecisive. I would get paralyzed. I couldn't make decisions. Often I couldn't complete tasks. I felt totally alone, even though I was with people all the time and I was building a good relationship. But I really didn't feel like I was just totally out there, basically. So after going on this quest, and really realizing where I was, this is what I did. I came up with this 4-step plan that I started working in conjunction with looking at solutions. So what I needed to do was get my head in place, and I knew where I was at and how I felt. I didn't see any future. I didn't see any path forward. So I knew I had to come up with a way to see where I was going and feel like that I had hope in the world. And there's 2 things that I did that were very helpful that I'd like to share with you. Number one, this Odyssey plan, and I read I read this book. It was recommended to me. And at Stanford University, they have a life design lab, and these 2 guys, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, have worked on tons of studies and experiments to kind of figure out, how to build a life. And they titled their book "Designing Your Life" because they use design thinking in building your life. And design thinking is, again, there's a lot of science backing this up. When designers are looking to solve a problem, the very successful ones don't come up with they don't come up with a solution and try to work that solution out. Step one is you come up with as many solutions and designs as you can. And by having a multitude of things to look at and work through, you can generally find better solutions and a better course of action that way. And they put this in when someone was designing your life. And so it started with just some introspective, and I've never been one to do this kind of stuff, but I thought, again, I'm on a quest. I resolved to do things and try them out. So I did this, and basically it was super easy, but very time consuming and thought provoking. And I came back to this several times, but here's the steps to that. You basically create 3 distinct life scenarios and you write about it. So you write 3 plans. Plan 1 is what would my life look like in 5 years from now if I continued down my current path? If I did nothing different, what would it look like? Where would I be? Plan number two, what would my life look like in 5 years from now if my current path was unavailable to me and I took an entirely different path? So I looked at what I was doing now, the different jobs I do and where I was at, and what if all that fell apart? What would I do? And I wrote about that quite a bit. And then third, and this was kind of the fun one, was, what would my life look like in 5 years from now if I took a wild creative path where money or societal expectations didn't matter? What if I just did whatever I thought would be cool to do with, you know, with no thought of what people would think about me? Now, I'm not really saying like, if you have kids, just don't run off and join a monastery or something to leave your kids or anything like that. But there are some guardrails there. But what if I took all the fear out of my life or the indecision and just went with it? And this was really, really eye-opening. And after I did this and really thought about it, I kind of like where I'm at and where I'm going now, and I resolved to tweak my current path and work towards that. With some caveats, like I'm a person that doesn't like to just follow the rules exactly. Like I'll always modify things somewhat to make them work better for me. But this was really good. So I really encourage you, wherever you're at in life, just do this. This is a good way to really, put some perspective in what you're doing. And then I added another little thing because of a book. Well, let's see. So include, really detail in your plan steps, where you'd live, what you'd be doing for work, who'd you be with, what would your day look like? That was another thing that I spent a lot of time, what would be my best day in that scenario? What would I be doing? How would I feel? That was really, really eye-opening. The next thing I did was this dreamlining exercise. This was popularized by Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Workweek book. This is an old book. It's kind of dated. There's some stuff in there that is kind of not so pertinent now, but there's a lot of things that are timeless in there. And I try to reread this every now and then, and this kind of popped up on my list again. But it's basically a goal-setting method to help you pursue really goals that are push goals, basically stretch goals. And it goes like this. You create 2 timelines, one for 1 year from now and one for 5 years in the future. And you just kind of think whatever they would be. You list your dreams in 3 categories. First is having, like, what would you want to have? Cabin in the woods, a vintage motorcycle. It really doesn't matter. And, don't hold back, even if you think that it is crazy, or what would people think of me, or I'm a materialistic jerk if I want this. It doesn't matter. Just put it in there. Doesn't if you think there is a odd chance that you might want that, put it down. Just as an aside, this is there has been quite a few studies about writing things down, like goals or things that you want. The mere fact of writing them down on paper increases the likelihood that you will achieve whatever that is by almost 60%. This has been studied, and there's peer-reviewed studies on this, but it's super, even if it never happens, but the odds, you can increase the likelihood of getting whatever you want, your cabin in the woods. It's worth it. So just put everything down. That's kind of what I did. And then what do you want to be? What's your identity in the world? Do you speak multiple languages? Are you a published author? Do you own a business? Do you, you're an entrepreneur, you're a college professor, you're a teacher, whatever the things that you want to be. When people look at you and say, oh, that guy just put those things down there, no matter how wild they are. And then what would you be doing? What experiences would you want to have? Would you hike the Appalachian Trail or go to retreat? Would you be a digital nomad? Would you be living in, whatever you be doing, just put those things down. Now, here, I did this really early one morning in a Starbucks, and it was kind of a heavy day, and I was having a hard day, and I did this, and this was really uplifting for me because it gave me a star going forward. And I did this, and it really kind of, I don't know, it was a big release for me. I look at that often, add to it even now. Now, there's more steps to this. I personally didn't take the next steps, but I'll share the other steps with you because they really kind of guaranteed success if you go forward. So this is the things that Tim kind of recommends. He says just go through your top four, pick out four, and then estimate how much they would cost per month. So whatever that is. So for example, here's four dreams: having a camper van for weekend getaways. Either monthly cost of $500 for rental or loan payment. Fluent Spanish, online classes for $150, volunteer in Costa Rica. And then once you kind of know what those monthly costs are, then you calculate your target monthly income, what you need to bring in from your job or your business or whatever, in order to fund that dream. What you do is you sum these all up, you add them all up, and then you multiply them by 1.3 to give a little buffer on the expenses in case something pops up. And then you work towards that, getting that amount together so you can, you can achieve your dreams. And then, each week kind of list a couple steps that you can take to move towards each streamline. If you just Google Niels Bohrman, this streamlining guide gives you a really tight step-by-step. But again, when I did it, once I got it all on paper, I felt pretty energized, and I really didn't take those next steps, but I really, 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 I don't know. I probably should do that, but I didn't do that. I didn't really need to do that. So whatever works for you, you do you. I guess that's where I'm kind of going with this. The next thing is setting up for kind of the system, how you put it all together, is the brain dump. And this is another thing that I really needed to get my mind in focus for drastic life change, is this brain dump. And when you're in a space where you're overwhelmed and having a hard time, this is really freeing, because when you are in that spot, your brain just can't lock on to anything because it's everything's so nebulous out there. But if you can get it all on paper, and remember, planning on paper is key. Just throwing it out there, kind of frees up your headspace and helps organize everything. It is a very stress relieving exercise. And I kind of morphed this into some other things that I'll show you in a second. But, this is a great place to start, and especially like if you're in a spot, like if you're an entrepreneur and you have your business and maybe the business is struggling a little bit and you're not sure where to go, this is where I always recommend you start. And I've been in a tough spot here, had a hard couple years, and I've returned to this time and time again, and it's very, very helpful. And what you do is set a timer for 15 minutes, quickly write everything you can think of: ideas, commitments, fears, anything, worries, whatever comes to your mind. Now, a good friend, my good friend Rachel, I was telling her about this, and what I was normally doing is I was just making a list of all this stuff I had on my mind, and she said, "Oh, yeah, that's great, but here's a better way to do it, Dave." What she would recommend is, like, instead of writing a list on each line, she said, write very quickly, but in little random spots all over a page. And what she references is almost like a reverse mind map. If you know what a mind map is, like you put a topic in the middle of the page, and then you do like thought bubbles in every direction and branching off on different things that come to mind. What she was doing is, and recommending is like you just put everything in there in random place. And then once your time is up, step back and kind of look at it and look for connections or groupings or whatever insights and try to connect them together. So, this is a quick little snapshot of a page that I did the other day and just put it all out there and just kind of pulled things together. This is super, super helpful. And it feeds into kind of a next step that we'll get to in just a second. When do you do this? Like part of the Sunday evening ritual, which we'll talk about, or Monday mornings, or just quarterly, annually. But weekly is probably the best time to do it. This is where I do this. Just kind of get it all out. Throw it all out there. Now, the other part of this, the issue that I had, and maybe you don't, but maybe you do. Like when you're overwhelmed like that and you're trying to get things going on, fear is underlying in all of this. And part of productivity is finding the procrastination, but often the fear, subconscious fear feeds into the procrastination. Fear unconsciously is, like fear of failure, fear of criticism. What are other people's going to think if I do this or that, or you have the personal fear of, your low self-esteem. How do we get rid of that? And really, fear and anxiety and that feeds into this procrastination, it's basically a coping mechanism. If you can avoid something or tell yourself, oh, I'm going to not do that today, I'm going to do that tomorrow, you immediately get a dopamine hit. It feels good. Oh gosh, that's off my plate. I don't have to do that tomorrow. And doing this once, avoiding the uncomfortable, it can become addictive, and you can easily become a chronic procrastinator just by being in this sort of headspace. And once you start doing it, it can spill into other areas of your health. I don't want to go to the doctor because I'm a little worried about what he'll say, so I'm not going to go. And really, it is interesting that I've been, checking out Stoicism quite a bit here lately, and there's this idea of premeditatio malorum, the idea of you really think about and really hold on to the bad thing that's going to happen. Seneca said it best: a man suffers more from imagination than reality. And that is the truth. Often, even if you're a procrastinator, sometimes a lot of your problems just go away because they just don't happen. What we feared never came into place. So this is kind of tied into the brain dump idea, but back to Tim Ferriss, he had this issue as well, and he came up with this idea of fear setting. Let's get the fears out of our head, and let's get them on paper and look at them and plan for them. So step one is define what it is you're afraid of, what's worrying you. What can you do to revert or reduce the likelihood that this is going to have an effect on you, and then what if it does happen? What are you going to do about that? So he just puts 3 columns down on a piece of paper. What is it that I'm afraid of? What can I do to prevent that? And what can I do to fix the problem? Here's an example of maybe an entrepreneur thinking about going into business, leaving up his job. What's the fear? What's the worst thing that could happen? If I take action to open my business and quit my job. What specific actions I can do to reduce the likelihood of these things happening. And then if it does happen, what I need to do to get back on track. So here's an entrepreneur fear setting page. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. What can I do? I can set up freelance on the side. I can reduce costs of living. I can reach out to contacts and start applying for jobs. I won't be able to succeed working on my own. I can work with a coach or get advice. What can I do to prevent that? What can I do to repair it? Still get a job. And then again, this is kind of a prompt, but what might be the benefits of an attempt or a partial success? So this is a way to kind of get your mindset in place. It's all, even if you do fail, you learn new skills, you kind of built up your courage. I learned what I'm capable of. You met new people. You would never wonder what if. And then what are the costs of inaction? What if you did nothing? These things are all consequences that you can really look into. This is a great exercise to do. I do this fairly often. It's all about being uncomfortable especially when you're an entrepreneur. You have to do uncomfortable things all the time. And this exercise, even on the especially on the big ones, this really kind of helps plan alternatives. So we've put a lot of stuff on paper up to this point. I thought about some stuff, and now we can put this all together into a goal setting section. But before we do that, there's one other thing that we need to help with our prioritization. And I came across this, gosh, now I forget the guy's name, but it was a psychologist from the 60s. And this was a great way to kind of check where you are now. And it's called the Wheel of Life. Basically, you just draw a circle on a piece of paper, and then you divide it into 3 thirds, 3 pie pieces, and we rate them, we name them. Basically, we want health, relationships, and work. These are the 3 big pieces in our lives. Then we further divide those thirds into 3 other slices. So in health, there's physical health, there's mental health, and then there's spiritual health. And each of those are very important. And in work, our job, a career, whatever we're doing, money, which is sort of like personal finance, and then growth, which is kind of an undefined sort of segment, but it is, how do you feel about, where you're at and where you're moving in your professional career and your personal finances, kind of all melded together. And then in relationships, there's family, there's friends, and then like romantic, romance relationships. And so what you do in this exercise as part of your goal setting is you rate how you feel, where you're at in each one of these things. You want to be able to answer this question. The actions I am taking are consistent with where I want to be in each one of these segments. So 10, you're making progress and things are doing great or doing well and they're meaningful to you, or that you're enjoying the journey, you're feeling well. 1, you're stuck, not doing so well. So 1 is the very center of the circle. 10 is the out. And what we're trying to do here is like put together, like the Excel radar chart. So here's where I was at a while back. So physical, I'm doing pretty good. I'm gymming it pretty hard. Gave myself an 8. Mental, I'm making progress here, making a lot of progress. Getting therapy, doing some things like that. Spiritual, about the same. Working on my meditation, trying to be a bit more mindful. Job and career, I'm doing well there, I feel like. Money, down a little bit. Took a giant financial hit a year or so ago. Still digging out of that. Growth, I think I'm doing okay, really, but the kind of hit I took and digging out, I feel like I should have moved forward a little bit faster. In relationships, I got into a big fight with my family. I come from a big Catholic family, so there's a lot of drama going on. There's a ton of us. So that's kind of a low point. With all that's been going on and all the things I've been battling, I've kind of let my friendship slide a little bit. And romantic, I'm doing pretty well, actually. Got into a great relationship and very happy there. And so once you rate these, then you fill them in so that you can kind of see where you're heavy on things. And then you can kind of see on mine, the relationship thing is kind of where I'm struggling a little bit on the money. And then we go through and we pick we pick three basically, to be our priorities. So you can pick more than that, do whatever you want. You do you. I want to concentrate on my friends and family, try to rebuild those relationships, make time for that. I want to work on my personal finances and then kind of work on myself, get my attitude. And that's always a priority for me. So those are my four big areas where I'm going to work. And then I can just kind of build a plan from that. Those would be my major priority goals that I'm going to work from a personal standpoint. So when we go to set goals, to be our goals intentional, there's two types of goal setting, There's kind of a mental mind trick, you can do is like, instead of saying, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, I want to make it positive. I don't want to make it negative. I don't want to say, I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 12 months, or I'm going to, hate myself or something. We want to look at it in a positive way. In 12 months, I want to be celebrating losing those 30 pounds, and make sure you understand why that goal is important and what can you do to make the goal setting fun. Again, we want to be joyful in what we do and have a positive attitude about everything. So what can we do to make it fun as we move towards that goal? And then number four, and most importantly, as I said before, write it down. We achieve our goals we are more likely to achieve our goals if we write those goals down. And actually we'll share those goals with other people. But the mere fact of writing them down on paper really increases the likelihood that you will achieve those goals. Now, I know everyone has seen the SMART goals. There's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. I will lose 30 pounds by January 1st, whatever it is. Those basically were what we call outcome goals. There's some sort of outcome I'm moving towards. Now, if you look at, for example, if a company has sales goals for the end of the year, at the end of the year, our revenue, each salesperson will hit this metric by the end of the year. You will always notice that as you get closer to the goal, that's when things start to actually happen. In the beginning, people tend to think, well, I got plenty of time to achieve this goal, so I'm really not going to work so hard until the end. But most of the activity to achieve that goal happens at the very end, which can be stressful, time consuming, takes time away from other activities that you need to do. So a better way to do is what we call nice goals. They are near-term, input-based, controllable, and energizing. And so what a nice goal is it's not focused on, what the actual goal is, but what are the steps to get you to that goal and track those instead. So, for example, if I was going to lose 30 pounds by such and such a date, what were the steps that I would need to do on a regular basis to achieve that goal without worried about what the outcome is? So that would be, well, I need to be in the gym, 5 days a week. I need to be able to, make time for that. And then it's not about what you, not so much about what you do, each step of the way. It's that you're actually doing the step. So the mere fact of showing up to the gym, even if it's a bad gym day where you don't really push that hard, don't feel great, the mere fact that you actually did it will most likely bring you towards that goal attainment. So for example, if I wanted to, put a bunch of reels out for, or if I wanted to get, a thousand subscriptions on my Instagram, if I make the commitment to post a reel every other day and keep that up, then that would bring me towards that goal. So a good way to do this idea of break the chain. This is kind of a kind of a psychological tool that you can use. That if you can if you can visually track different things. One technique that I actually used, for the gym is I had a little calendar by the back door. Is I would when I was leaving to go to the gym, I would just put an X just like this, and the idea was don't break the chain. Once you get going, just keep on doing it. So the quantity is what really helps you do that. So back to that idea is, what can I do to put these things onto my goal list? And so using the Wheel of Life, these are the goals that I put together. Number one, in my health, I meditate twice per day. Go to church these are the spiritual thing. And in my physical, I do, what's called 75 hard. I do that hard twice a day, but twice a year. But again, this is something that this is part of the body part. When I was in the beginning, when we were talking about the mind, and then the body. This is a kind of a really cool thing. I'll show you that this is the actual steps. The 75 hard challenge is strict diet, no alcohol. When you say strict diet, it can be any diet. You pick the diet. It could be I'm only going to eat peanut M&Ms for the next 75 days. That's the thing. The 75 is 75 days. No alcohol. 2 45-minute workouts, one outside regardless of weather, drink a gallon of water daily, read 10 pages of nonfiction daily, take a progress picture. Now, as I told you earlier, I tend to modify things a little bit, so I call it the 75 modified challenge. I personally did the diet. I picked one. I did 2 45-minute workouts. I have a trainer that I meet 5 days a week in late afternoon. So that's a heavy weightlifting routine. But my other workout in the mornings, I walk for 45 minutes, not too hard. If it's raining or super cold, I go to Planet Fitness and hit a treadmill. I do drink the gallon of water when I do it. I read the 10 pages of nonfiction. I don't take the daily progress picture because, man, I hate that. It looks a little creepy on my phone, so I don't do that. But it made the world of difference, and I found that that whole idea, that whole methodology, really turned my life around. Doing it strictly for 75 days. I do that twice a year. One at the first of the year, and then one toward in the fall. But I do parts of this all the time. Maybe I'm not so strict right now. I'm not so strict on my diet. I do drink a little bit occasionally. I still do the 2 45-minute workouts every day. And I don't exactly drink a gallon of water daily, but I drink a lot. And every day I do read 10 pages of nonfiction. That is super key as part of my morning routine, which we'll go over in just a second. Now, getting into what we really wanted to talk about is organizing your time. So I took all this and kind of put it together into kind of a system. And there's a couple other little tools we need to talk about before we get to that. Is the idea of an ideal ordinary week calendar. If you're going to prioritize you first in your life, then you need to do that. And work has a way of just sucking up your time and getting in the way. So you have to start with yourself. You have to prioritize you first and schedule that on your calendar. If you have a meeting with your boss, at 2:00, well, then you're going to be there at 2 o'clock. Or if you're going to have a meeting with your customer at 4, you're going to be there at 4 o'clock. This idea of calendarization is really key. We all live by that. So, but what you want to do is, prioritize what you need to do first for yourself, So start with your personal goals, the goals we just did on the wheel of life, bring those in there. And then actually plan when you're going to wake up and when you're going to go to sleep. And when we do this, just think of blocks of time, not the specific task. You're going to block out time for certain things. So here's how I started. I just, we use Outlook here. Maybe use Google Calendar, same idea. So you can build another calendar, and then you can lay your new calendar on top of your existing calendar and see the two together. And that way you're not messing things up on your work calendar, for example. So here's my calendar when I built this last year. So I'm an early riser. I go to the gym first, and either gym or, both. This is where I walk, and I go either to the Planet Fitness or I hit the neighborhood. Do that for an hour. I come back, then my morning routine starts, and then we'll talk about that in just a second. And then the work day begins. And then there's certain things I have to block out every day. And then where at the bottom there's my second gym thing, so I've blocked all those things out. I could also add in, like in the evenings, let's just say if I committed to a date night on Tuesday night, then I would plug that in as well. Or if I needed time to, let's say I wanted to build time to take guitar lessons, I would plug that in. These are all the things that I need to do. Those are the most important things. And then you plan around that. So we start with the brain dump, get all those things, when we're going to plan our white space, all the things that we have in our brain dump, bring it all out. And what I did is I used the brain dump to build what I call a master task list. All the random tasks that might be out there floating, bugging me, I just put them on a list, and I can pick from that. I can use that as part of my prioritization. I do this occasionally, this Eisenhower matrix. It's been recommended to me so many times. I'm just telling you, you rate, when you're going to do like a weekly plan or something, you can rate these things based on, things to do first, decide or, delegate it or delete it. You can kind of do this in your head, but the idea is like, when you're getting ready to put your calendar in, choose 10 things that you think are important for the upcoming week. Out of the 10, choose the top 5, and then put together a daily hurdle, which we'll talk about. And then just, if you have tasks, your other things that you need to do, make sure you don't break the chain. So when I put this stuff in there, I just kind of write in there, add this to my calendar. I've overlaid my personal calendar, my ideal week calendar. So I've blocked out time for that. And then you just put in deep work and things. We'll talk about that in just a second. So here's the system that I set up. And again, what I'm encouraging you to do is just try several things and then come up with your own system. There's no right way to do things, and just making it up as you go along. But here's my rules. Every day there's a daily hurdle. There's a bunch of different books on this, and they call them different things. Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, or Harvard Review of the MIT, The Most Important Task. It goes back to this management consultant back in the early 1900s called Ivy League that kind of came up with this. But the idea is, what is the one thing that you have to do today that no matter what has to get done? And the idea is you get that done, or you work on that before anything else. And if you do that, you'll automatically achieve better results. Um, there's a couple of little things that I've found that work really well. Is the 2-minute rule. I forget who really came. I think it was another Brian Tracy or Dave Allen. 2-minute rule. If it'll take you 2 minutes to do, just do it. You get an email. Hey, can you send me that PDF? Oh, yeah, I'll do that a little bit later on. Later on never comes, and then they have to hit you back again. Just take 2 minutes and do it. Um, there's this other idea about the 5-minute rule. Got a lot of rules here, but when you're having trouble getting started, let's say I need to write this business plan. I really don't feel like it. Just force yourself to do it for 5 minutes. It's often not the actual doing, but the starting is the hard part. So if you just say, I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes and then I'm going to quit, chances are, if you can get over that first hump, if you start doing it, you'll keep on going and make some progress. Now, the most important thing I learned in all this is the idea of time blocking, which we'll dig into in just a second. Most important thing. And then lastly, this idea of regular review and adjustment. Um, Football teams, sports teams, they are always improving. And this idea of, we've all heard it like, oh, the football team's watching the films, the replays of the last game, because they're always looking for ways to improve. And we as people don't do that enough in our personal and business life. So we're going to add that in there. So let's talk about what is time blocking. So it's just simple as this. You assign tasks to specific blocks of time on your calendar because it forces you to prioritize. And then it creates focus zones where, I'm the king of all this, of just scatterbrain multitasking. It's like I'll start on a business plan and I need to send this email. I'll jump over and do this. Cal Newport wrote this book, Deep Work. I don't know if anybody's checked that one out. I should have put that up here for you. But, the idea of really, making this time as focused time with your phone off and notifications off, and this is what you do for this amount of time, is very transformational. So what you do is these 6 steps. List all the stuff you have to do this week. Estimate how long it'll take each task. This is what you do when you're filling out your calendar. It always takes longer than you think, so add a bit on there. And then assign blocks of time for each task. Be realistic about what you're gonna can do in a week. So if you have a bunch of different little tasks like emails or calls, batch those together in a little block of time. Have some break time, put some buffer time, but buffer zones in between tasks, and then make sure you have breaks where you can get away from your work and move forward. So as part of the system, we've got all the tools together. Lastly, and this is not new, I'm just kind of doing it my way. I'm sharing it with you, but this is what I call the Sunday 15. I carve out 15 minutes on Sundays. Do I do it every Sunday? Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm doing something else, but I'll quickly do that Monday morning. But my step one is I'll write this on paper because, again, we plan on paper and think on paper. I think about the prior week, what went well, what didn't, what really sucked, what would I do differently? Just kind of write a few sentences on that. What am I what am I grateful for last week? 3 things. I add to my brain dump. Put that together. I use my brain dump to create a master task list. These are things I need to do some point in the future, pull up my priorities, and then I time block them into my calendar. And then on Monday morning, that's when I start my week. I have a morning routine. Now, I think morning routines are great. Sometimes based on your life, you can have a morning routine. Maybe, when the kids are small and you got to get them up and get them ready to go to school and get them all fed, and then you take them to school and drop them off, and now you got to go straight to the office, and maybe you don't have time for all this stuff, but if you're you know, if you can just fit things in here and there, it's the routine is the most important thing. If you can get up a little bit earlier, you know, I don't know. It's just important to fit this into your life. You know, maybe you can't do all of it, some of it, but is great. But you know, my routine is just what we looked at the calendar. I have exercise, I have meditation, I have morning pages, which we didn't really talk about, but in a nutshell, since we're running up on time, morning pages basically are. Um, it was in the book The Artist's Way, Julie Campbell. You just write 3 pages of whatever comes to mind. You know, it's almost like a journaling brain dump. You know, think on paper. This is where you kind of get clarification for the day. I read my 10 pages, I review the master task list, I put my calendar together, I got my daily hurdle, I add to my habit tracker. All this takes, not including the exercise, about an hour every morning. But it sets up my day, you know, to give it a good day. So 4 minutes to spare. I don't know if we have any questions. I haven't been watching the chat. I've just been blasting along here. So, okay.
Yeah, you do in the Q&A, Dave.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Here we go. Gotcha. Oh my gosh. So Anne says, this is a bit unrelated, but also adjacent to the fear setting exercise. It's an element of the AA program that helps folks work through their fears. In general, fears are the root of many of our issues. So I think it's great. You're suggesting we look at them in relation to what might prevent us from achieving our goals. This is the fear sequence I've used. What is the fear? Why do I have it? Coming in next part. Okay, and then the fears, and let's see, fears say, make a statement, I have reason that this fear has led to comfort, security, health, and well-being that has failed me utterly. Yeah, breathe here, this is a heavy statement. What have I believed about this fear? And what would God, the universe, spirit have me believe? Just a little addition to your fear setting space. Yeah, that's awesome. Again, there's no one way to do this stuff, or no one right way, but always, like I said, I just tweak whatever works for me, and hang on to the things that work for you, and make them all work. I think that's it. We are like at 1 o'clock. So I hope this was helpful. Again, it's just like a little piece of journey. I'm not a time management expert or a relationship expert or mental health professional, but these are all things that I found were very useful, to me, and helped me move things forward. And it's just been part of my journey, and I thought I would share them with you today. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you found it helpful. Janet, thanks for driving the ship as always.
Sure thing. Great presentation, Dave. Thank you.
All right. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you guys next time. Don't forget to reach out. Be happy to chat, and I'll see you guys about somewhere. Have a good Tuesday, and we'll see you next Tuesday.